end of the day, Alabama, and I had said this, I had taped something here, Matt Barrie Show last week about when you look at it, because I find, and I said this, and there were a lot of people that didn't like it, but I think that you would agree. What was in it for Dan Lanning and Sark and these guys to take the job? There was nothing in it for them because mostly Sark, he can build in Alabama, Texas, but Oregon sitting up there in the Pacific Northwest, going to the Big Ten with how Dan Lanning recruits, he could legitimately win that conference year in and year. What was in it for two of the stars of the sport to take the job? I don't think they settled on Kalen DeBoer, but I think at the end of the day, he was the most likely to take the job because the star coaches knew better than to step into a situation and replace Nick Saban.
Yeah, and I think Lanning's the most interesting, and he had to lean on what Mario Cristobal did and Willie Taggart, two coaches before him at Oregon, and Taggart blew up. Cristobal is struggling, may end up being successful, but by the way, speaking of Cristobal, if he'd gone back 3 or 4 years ago, if he'd stayed at Oregon, he would have been the leading candidate.
No question.
Nick Saban. But I mean, it's a cliche, and I hate it because I've lived through transitions. You want to be the guy after the guy. That's not always successful either. I've seen the guy after the guy at Alabama, and it was Bill Curry, and he went down in flames, fleeing there after 3 years to go to Kentucky. So that's not automatic. There's no tried axiom right now to describe Alabama because we don't really know. And ultimately, what is success for Kalen DeBoer? If he gets to the playoffs next year, that's good, but not good enough. He's going to be living in a long shadow, and a lot of people have debated why was Nick Saban at the press conference on Saturday, and I'm told by people, and and later today I'll be talking to the AD at Alabama, Greg Byrne, and maybe get some more clarification that Saban is involved, and he's involved because he has to be involved. There's so many players that he has agreed with to stay that they need Saban on board right now to complete the deals.
Yeah, he's almost acting as a de facto president and CEO of the pro. He's going to have an office there in Tuscaloosa. I don't know how well that's ultimately going to go with how Saban's wired relative to Kalen DeBoer kind of saying, hey, man, like I got to be in your shadow anyway. You got a statue with pies out in front of it. Like, I respect you. I mean, Spurrier's got an office at the Swamp. The stories Dan Mullen tells me about him are hilarious. But at the end of the day, DeBoer has to build this thing through his eyes after Saban helps secure some recruits and some portal. And you mentioned what is success for DeBoer. In 17 years at Alabama, 17 years, Nick Saban didn't have double-digit wins once.
Mm-hmm. First time.
That is absolutely insane that in 2007, his first year on the job was the only year they didn't win double-digit games. So for me, that says, well, you get year one maybe not to win double-digit games, but after that, we expect 16 consecutive seasons of 10 wins or more.
Yeah, and Matt, for any newcomers to this show, I spent 30 years in Alabama. I covered the transition between Bear Bryant and Ray Perkins, and that was one of the most difficult things I've ever seen because everything the new guy did. And by the way, he came from the New York Giants as the head coach, so he thought he knew everything. He didn't know anything, even though he played at Alabama. And DeBoer will get a pass, but this is not a world where anyone is patient anymore, and there will be meltdowns by the hour, but he'll have to endure that. And I have no earthly idea whether he will or won't. I mean, anybody who thinks they know is just making it up.
Yeah, and well, I mean, no one ever would do that on TV or in media, make stuff up to create a good conversation. It just doesn't happen. I do want to get into this before we get out of here, kind of a season in review. Michigan wins the national championship. They do so in dominant fashion over Kalen DeBoer's Washington Huskies. Now the next shoe for us to drop who work in college football is Jim Harbaugh. I was proud of you and your mea culpa on Harbaugh when you were going on the various television programs of ESPN, saying you've never been more dead wrong about anything in your life about the Jim Harbaugh experience. I hope the Michigan fans now will welcome you into their living rooms. But now, Paul, we sit and wait. We know Harbaugh interviewed with the Chargers. We know he interviewed with the Falcons. We know, based on some credible reporting from people who cover Michigan football, that negotiations with the Wolverines are at an impasse because of certain clauses in the contracts. So this is going to be a two-parter for me. Part one, where does this end with Harbaugh in your estimation?
I suspect it ends pretty quickly with whatever other job he wants to interview for. And I don't understand how the NFL does it. It's very bizarre. They're because of the Rooney Rule, they acknowledge who they interview. This isn't double secret. He needs to go. He needs to come or go. I can't imagine why he would stay. If he's trying to argue a clause in his contract that would make him immune from any NCAA violations, that's a non-starter. You can't do that.
Right.
So I think he's on his way out, and then it's whether Moore gets moved up or they open that search. I think Michigan's in pretty good shape, and why? I mean, I think the biggest upset to me would be for Jim to stay, because I think everybody has already discounted the fact that he's leaving, and I think it's an NFL story more than a Michigan story. And when I did that mea culpa, I think sometimes, Matt, you just have to move on. 5 years ago, I would have just kept going, as you know. I would have been on the couch and you would have tried to be getting me to be poly positive. But I think I came away respecting what Harbaugh did on the field, and I'm just so over everything that happens off the field in today's world. I mean, we're talking about whether Nick Saban can help out to buy players, to give them enough money that he promised to keep them to stay. And I'm going to get upset about something that the NCAA is looking into that I think most of us don't even understand what it's about. No, I'm moving on.
Yeah, because look, I said this on College Football Final directly after the national championship, that when you look at Jim Harbaugh, well, what did he set out to do in his 10 years at Michigan? He set out to return his alma mater back to where they believe is their rightful place in college football, which is among the nation's elite. Okay. He struggled doing that for a while. He couldn't get over the Ohio State hump. He's beat them 3 consecutive years. He couldn't get over the semifinal hump. He did that. Well, now he can, and he can leave Ann Arbor. Here you go, guys. I gave you 10 years, a national championship, 3 consecutive Big Ten championships, 3 consecutive spots in the playoff. I have elevated Michigan football back to where it needs to be. It's time for me to go. Whereas 2 to 3 years ago, I think Michigan fans would have been pissed. Now I think they're like, you know what, Jim, we got what we needed. Thanks, brother. You're out.
And you know, the most interesting part of this, I think, they just named a new AD at Ohio State, Ross Bjork, who fired Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss and Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. And the coach who I'm more concerned about than anybody right now is Ryan Day. You don't throw up his gaudy record. I'm well aware of what he has done, but his popularity, he looks like a busted stock on Wall Street. And should he lose to the new coach at Michigan, whoever that is, this guy's got problems.
And what does that mean for Mike Elko, who was just hired by Bjork? I mean, look, he hasn't even had year 1, and I think he was a popular hire amongst the A&M fans. But now A&M's going to have to bring in an AD. And what if said AD comes from, I don't know, pick a school that's got a hot, trendy coach? Like now we're restarting the cycle, because you're right. What's the one thing we in the media always say when a coach struggles? Well, the new AD didn't hire him.
Yeah. That goes for every business, and we're well aware of that, even in ours. And I only bring it up because as the season begins, I mean, people will speculate about Billy Napier and Sam Pittman and this coach and that coach. But I'm fascinated by the Ryan Day story, because there's never been a coach in college football history who has had a better record and is talked about behind his back more today than Ryan Day.
Yeah, keep an eye on this one, especially, by the way, with CJ Stroud, who's going to win Rookie of the Year. Yeah. He's got the Texans in the divisional round of the playoffs, and on that same roster with CJ Stroud, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and a young Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah. So, I mean, Ohio State's one of the biggest brands in football. Ryan Day is one of the most successful coaches. But Ryan, as we say down here, don't buy any green bananas. I mean, your time is coming.
And I'll tell you this, and I encourage you not to go down this rabbit hole, but if you really want to get into some coaching craziness, go find it on the internet, in the darkest parts of the internet, of the theories now of the Jed Fish move to Washington. He only stays everywhere about 2 years, right? And now people are already placing him at Florida because he's a Florida grad when Billy Napier gets canned. But it's like, this dude hasn't even coached a game at Washington, and you're already putting him at Florida.
Yeah, I remember the first time I talked to him, and I know you know him better than I do, but all we talked about was Spurrier. So yeah, there's another name out, and I'm going to leave it for the next, but there's another name out there who I think will be prominent if Florida ends up looking for a coach. But I don't want to go there because Billy Napier is a good man, and he's done a good job of can I get back to you on that?
Yeah. We'll table the discussion. We are just entering the long off season. We got plenty of time to break down each team and their bona fides. Paul Finebaum, great stuff. We gave it a week. You were the most sought after man in media after the Nick Saban news a week ago today. We're glad that you made some time for us. It was a great conversation, but I don't know how we're going to move forward. Oh, here, I'll end it on this one. Who now, in your mind, in college football is the top of the sport other than, can't say Kirby Smart because we know but who now, other than Kirby, is the guy?
That's obviously a difficult question, but if I'm looking for a guy to buy stock in that I think is going to keep getting better, it would probably be Steve Sarkisian.
I was going to go Sark or Brian Kelly. I think LSU just got over their biggest hurdle, and with how he's recruiting, what have we always said? LSU could have been Alabama if Nick Saban stayed. Any coach who figures that thing out, you could have Alabama for a decade. I think that's where we are with Brian Kelly and LSU.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's not only from a recruiting standpoint. He hired Corey Raymond yesterday from Florida. How they let him go at Florida, I'll never know. But he is that announcement alone has energized people in Louisiana because he has brought in some of the best players in LSU history.
Yeah, buy your stock in Baton Rouge. We've got a lot of stock talk today. Maybe I will have my pal Kramer come on, who, by the way, loves visiting the Sports Center studios. Very, very interesting. Okay. Yeah, big.
You introduced him to me one time up there.
That's right.
He's still bugging me.
Look, he'll do that from time to time. Paul, great stuff. Look forward to doing this again with you soon. Between now and then, I think I'll bug you when the Harbaugh stuff goes down, and we'll dive into that.
Hey, my schedule, I have nothing to do until July, so call me anytime.
Music to our ears. Thank you, Paul.
Give me something I can feel. Light a cigarette.